So yesterday I found out that Justin Tucker, who was probably the most reliable kicker in his time, has now been released by the Ravens. With all the off-the-field stuff going on with him, and also the Ravens also drafting Tyler Loop, a kicker from Arizona, in the 6th round, this was kind of inevitable. Justin Tucker had his worst season in 2024 as far as kicking a football goes, and Ravens just decided we got to move on. We got to feature a kicker, and we just got to roll with it. I personally feel that it's really the end of an era, but it's also not a terrible move by the Ravens, because if Justin Tucker would have been playing, he would have probably gotten worse and worse and worse as time goes by. But, he might still go back to his prime. Who knows? As far as Tyler Luke goes, I sure hope he has at least just about almost as good as Justin Tucker is. Probably no one will be able to replicate what he did, but hopefully Tyler Loop is close. But anyways, welcome back to Grizzly Talks Football. We are back with college football team tier lists. This episode, we have the Big Ten. But yes, I am going to do every power conference from Tuesday to Thursday. I know I missed Monday. That is just on me. That's my fault. I'm thinking I'm going to do Big Ten next. Then I think I'm going to go ahead and do Big 12 tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I'll probably do ACC. And then we'll get to the group of fives in the upcoming weeks in May and June. If you haven't already, make sure you go down to the link description for the entire season playlist of every single episode thus far, and you'll also have it for future episodes whenever I post them, including this whole tier list series, along with division predictions, which is going to come out in August. For those of you wondering, they're not going to come out until the preseason. I'm probably going to say this quite a lot. But anyways, go down to the link in the description for the Season 2 Grizzly Talks football videos. And you also check out my playlist list to be able to find Season 1 if you want to watch that as well. Also, don't forget to hit the red subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so you don't miss a single one of my videos. Without further ado, let's get to the Big Ten tier list. And here we go! 2024 Big Ten tier list along with 2025 predictions. I did change one of the categories because, I kind of wanted to resemble a certain YouTuber. I will not say his name, but I'll leave his channel in the description as well. Because he's a very popular sports YouTuber, sports analyst, whatever you want to call him. But, yeah, he's a really good guy. But if you don't know the categories already, let's take a look at them. First off, we got the teams that are elite. Definitely got teams who are above average. Elite mean like you made the playoff and you had a very good season. Above average is like right around 10 wins. Decent is like right around 500 to like 8 wins sort of thing. Disappointing, like you weren't completely terrible, but you also weren't great enough to probably either make a bowl game or like you barely made one. And then you got the teams who are complete ass. Sound good? Perfect. Kicking things off, we got the Fighting Illini from Illinois. It's the first team in the video, and we are already starting with it above average. Got another 10-win season. They won their bowl game, which was a big one. In fact, it was the Citrus Bowl. 4 wins against ranked opponents, including the bowl game. Like, they played 6 ranked teams this season. They won against a ranked Kansas, a ranked Nebraska, a ranked Michigan, and then they beat a top 15 South Carolina, which is insane to say the least. Well, of course, 3 of those teams did not finish the season ranked. Or maybe it was 2. I can't remember the final AP poll yet. Yeah, no, it was 3 of 4. The Fighting Illini finished 10-3. Only 3 losses were against 2 more ranked opponents that they played. Penn State and Oregon, the 2 teams that represented the Big Ten in the championship game. And also an inexplicable loss to Minnesota. More on those Gophers later. I'll be brutally honest, it was kind of a passing attack, sort of, but it was also a very balanced kind of offense. Luke Altmaier, 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns to 6 picks. Not bad. Leader rushing was Josh McCray with 600 rushing yards with 10 touchdowns. I forgot how good of a rushing season this was in 2024 for both NFL and NCAA. And of course, the leading receiver was Pat Bryant. I believe he was drafted as well. he got just under 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. And speaking of Pat Bryant, he was the only player on Illinois that was drafted, and he was drafted in the third round by the Denver Broncos. Draft eligible players that weren't drafted were edge defender Seth Coleman, wide receiver Sakari Franklin, and offensive tackle J.C. Davis. Pretty successful season for the Illini. It's just, can they keep this consistency going? Up next, we got the Indiana Hoosiers. Hit it.
Elite.
I think this pick is really going to be controversial because as much as Indiana didn't really play much of great teams, they still finished with an 11-2 season. Oh, did I forget to mention they finished in the top 10 of the AP poll and made the playoffs? I guess what I'm trying to say is if you do make the playoff, you are an elite team at that season. So, great job for Indiana. But I gotta get this off my chest. Curt Cignetti is probably one of the greatest coaches to probably coach. And it's only been like, what, a couple of years now? I mean, Indiana's only losses were against ranked opponents, teams they were supposed to lose to. Sure, they played a very soft schedule, but if you make the playoffs, that really does mean something. Not only for the country, but also for your program. Curtis Rourke was injured for a couple games, but he still was able to get 3,000 passing yards with 29 touchdowns to 5 picks. Two players had 10-plus rushing touchdowns. That was Justice Ellison with 10 and 800 yards. And Tyson Lawton also had 668 yards with 12 touchdowns. And the leader receiver was just under 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. That was Elijah Surratt. I hope I said that right. And there were two players drafted this year to the NFL. C.J. West, defensive lineman, and quarterback Curtis Rourke were both drafted to the 49ers. Other draft-eligible players that went undrafted were offensive tackle Trey Whittig, linebacker Jalen Walker, and wide receiver Miles Price. I gotta be honest, this season kind of came out of nowhere, just like 2020, when they had Michael Penix on their team still. But still, this was a very impressive season by the Hoosiers. I'm sure Cignetti will still have another successful season for Indiana, even though it's probably not going to be as good as this one. Up next, we get the Iowa Hawkeyes. Yeah, I should say they're decent. 8-5 season. Not great. Lost to Iowa State as a ranked team. They were pretty disappointing this season. But seriously though, Iowa's kind of the same old Iowa, so I can't be too surprised. The only problem with this team is that they don't have a passing offense. Other than that, this team is pretty good. Great rushing offense, and their defense really saves them from a lot of these games. That's why they made like 2 Big 12 or Big 10 title games in the last couple seasons before this one. They weren't terrible, but they also weren't good enough to really be a great team. They only played 2 ranked teams. Ohio State, which they got spanked, and then they also played Missouri, which they also lost in the Music City Bowl. I'm just going to disregard the quarterback stats because these were pretty ass. But I am going to talk about a guy by the name of Caleb Johnson, who I'm very sure got drafted. 1,500 yards on 240 carries, and get this, 21 rushing touchdowns. Oh yeah, did I also mention he got 2 touchdowns on the receiving end as well? Caleb Johnson was indeed drafted along with 4 other players. You got Caleb Johnson going to the Steelers along with defensive lineman Yaya Black. Then you also got Mason Richmond, offensive lineman to the Seahawks. Another offensive lineman, Connor Colby, to the 49ers. And Luke Lachey, a tight end, going to the Houston Texans. Other undrafted players include cornerbacks Jamari Harris and Sebastian Castro, and linebacker Jay Higgins. As far as talent translating to the NFL, this was a pretty successful season for Iowa, but as far as their play on the field, not so much. And Iowa's also losing quite a bit of talent here, so not a great look for the Hawkeyes. Up next, we got the Maryland Terrapins.
Ass.
Yeah, they were legitimately ass. They only had 1 good win, and that was against USC. I don't think they were ranked at all, so it wasn't that good. But then they also had wins over 2 teams out of the FBS that went below 500 and also an FCS team. That was the only ones they had. Oh wait, UConn actually had a good team this year, but nobody knew that at week 1. Besides the 4 wins I just mentioned, they went 4-8 this season. They also got smacked by Oregon and Penn State. Not a great look. I gotta think Maryland was actually the opposite of Iowa. Maryland had a passing game, but barely a rushing game. What do I mean by this? Well, Billy Edwards did an okay season, 15 touchdowns, 2,900 yards, and 9 picks. The leading rusher with only 600 yards and 6 touchdowns was Roman Hemby. Not terrible, but not great. And then Ty Felton, who was definitely drafted, had just over 1,000 yards with 1,100 and 9 touchdowns. He was actually the first Maryland player to be selected to the Vikings, and then Ruben Hippolyte, the second linebacker, went to the Chicago Bears. Jordan Phillips, a defensive lineman, went to the Dolphins along with safety Dante Trader. Then wide receiver Caden Prather went to the Bills, and defensive lineman Tommy Akim-Bissot went to the Cowboys. And then there was also undrafted player in Glendon Miller, who was also a safety. 6 players drafted wasn't terrible. It was just the play on the field, not great. But I guess NFL teams saw the talent they had, I guess. That's the only reason I could think of why they were drafted. Oh, next you got the Michigan Wolverine. Decent. Like, they went 8-5, but they also beat a ranked USC and an Ohio State team that went on to win the national title. But then they lost some very interesting games, which people, I guess, were kind of expecting, but then again, not exactly thought that would happen. Jim Harbaugh led with quite a bunch of players, but not including Donovan Edwards, who was supposed to be a star, but did not have a great season at all. Like Illinois, Michigan played 6 ranked teams, and unfortunately for Michigan, they only won 2 of them in the regular season. 7 if you include Alabama, and 3 wins if you include that game as well. Lost badly in their own house to Texas. They also lost to Indiana, lost to Oregon in their own house, lost to Illinois. But then they beat USC, Ohio State, and Alabama to salvage their season, sort of. But seriously, Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl? Are we back for real right now? Let me tell you, rushing game was okay. Passing game? Ouch. The only quarterback that actually had more touchdowns than interceptions in that season was actually Alex Orji. I am not making that up. That is an actual thing. Because Davis Warren has 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 9 picks. Then Jack Tuttle has 1 touchdown to 2 picks. Saving this offense was the rushing game, with Khalil Mullins leading the way with just under 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. Donovan Edwards had 4.6 yards to carry, but he pretty much got outshined by Mullins. The only bright spot on the receiving corps was Colston Loveland. Of course, 56 catches, just under 600 yards with 5 touchdowns. Oh yeah, and he was also drafted to the Bears with a 10th pick in the draft. Oh yeah, there was also Mason Graham, who's drafted in the top 5 as well, along with another first rounder in Kenneth Grant. Other players that were drafted were Will Johnson in the 2nd round, Josiah Stewart in the 3rd round, cornerback and edge. The other 2 that I just mentioned in the 1st round were defensive linemen. Clem Owens was actually drafted to the Titans, and then offensive tackle Miles Hinton went to the Eagles. I'm very sure Josh Preeb and Donovan Edwards were also undrafted players that signed with different NFL teams. 7 players drafted, I mean, like, Michigan had all the talent in the world. It just wasn't the same with Jim Harbaugh, without Jim Harbaugh. Up next, we got Michigan State. Ass. This was such a bad season for Mel Tucker standards, but Michigan State has not been quite good since 2021. I'll tell you that. When they had Kenneth Walker on their team, yeah, they've been pretty bad. They played 3 ranked teams and lost all 3 of them in blowout fashion. The only wins that Michigan State had were against weak competition, unless you include Iowa. So they ended up with a 5-7 record. Not great for Mel Tucker's standards. Aiden Childs was okay. He had 2,400 yards, 13 touchdowns, 11 picks, but he just wasn't good enough. Let me tell you, Karen Lynch Adams is no Kenneth Walker. I mean, he had 650 yards and 2 touchdowns, but yeah, not great at all. And then, of course, you got Nick Marsh with 650 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then you got Monterey Foster Jr. with just under 600 yards, also with 3 touchdowns. Pretty bad stuff. And there was only 1 player drafted from this university, and that was Luke Newman, offensive tackle, who went to the Bears. They were definitely disappointing, but the fact that they didn't have a statement win really just proved that this season they were pretty ass. Up next, you got the Minnesota Gophers. Really, again, another decent team, but that's pretty much what Minnesota was this season. 8-5 season, not terrible. I mean, you got a bowl win, but also you beat USC. at home, which was great. And you also beat Illinois, in Champaign, which is really good for you. 2 ranked losses. You lost a close one to Michigan and a close one to Penn State. Like, you could have won against 4 ranked opponents this year. Like, let me tell you, this team was definitely competing. It's just, if a couple things went their way, they would have 100% beaten those 2 ranked opponents that I just mentioned that they couldn't quite beat. And obviously, they went to the Duke's Mayo Bowl and beat the Virginia Tech Hokies in their 24-10 to salvage an 8-win season again. Will they ever repeat the success that they had in 2019? Probably not. Max Brosmer, who I'm very sure was signed as an undrafted free agent, actually had 2,800 yards, 18 touchdowns, 6 picks. Not bad. And you also got Darius Taylor, who had just under 1,000 yards with 10 touchdowns. And also, you got Daniel Jackson leading the receiving corps with 800 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 75 catches. Oh yeah, there's also a guy named Elijah Spencer with 52 catches, just under 700 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. 3 players were drafted in this team. Second rounder, Ariante Urseri, offensive tackle, went to the Houston Texans. Then you got corner Justin Wally, went to the Colts, and linebacker Cody Lindbergh went to the Raiders. Along with Brosmer among undrafted players, you also had Ja Joyner at edge, interior offensive lineman Tyler Cooper, another edge Danny Strigo, wide receiver Daniel Jackson. Very good talent, and definitely could have the potential to have a 10-win season if things went your way, but that's tough. Maybe you guys might have a better squad next year. Who knows? Up next, we got Nebraska. Should I put them in decent? I mean, for Nebraska standards, it was a pretty decent season. Yeah, sure, why not? They're decent. They definitely got a great future ahead of them, that's for sure. But as far as how their season went, I would say more disappointing. But, you know, you can't really blame them. Nebraska has been pretty bad for like a couple years, so for them to have a step up in the right direction, it's not terrible. 7-6 season. I mean, you were actually ranked for like the first time since what, like 2018 or 2017, something like that. Every ranked opponent you played was an L, except 2 of the 3 of them were actually close games. I'm talking about the Illinois game and also the Ohio State game. You did beat a Colorado team that went on to the Alamo Bowl and was actually pretty close to winning a Big 12 title. And Nebraska entered their season with a bowl win over Boston College in the Pinstripe Bowl, so it wasn't all bad. Dylan Raiola, for his first season as a collegiate athlete, he had 13 touchdowns, 11 picks, 2,000 yards, not too shabby at all. And then you got Dante Dowdle with 600 yards and 12 rushing touchdowns on the ground. And no player on the receiving corps had over 600 yards. The closest one was Jamal Banks, 587 yards of 44 catches with 3 touchdowns. 2 players were drafted this year. Defensive lineman Ty Robinson went to the Eagles, and tight end Thomas Fedone, that was announced by Eli Mack, good for him, to the New York Giants. Other undrafted players include wide receiver Isaiah Nair, quarterback Tommy Hill, defensive lineman Nash Hutmacher, I literally butchered that completely, and safety Deshaun Singleton. Nebraska's got some talent, it's just they're just not quite at the level they want to be in, which is a very dominant force in the entire country, not just the Big Ten. And I gotta be the one to say it, they got a long way to go. Up next, you get the Northwestern Wildcats. Ass! There was really nothing to really talk about that's good about Northwestern right now. They made a couple Big Ten titles since the championship game was introduced, but they are not far away from that 2020 season where they got as high as number 8 in the country. Their highest ranking probably since 1995. They did not look good against every ranked team they played against, and I gotta be honest, the teams that they played, not great at all. Their only wins were against the Miami of Ohio team that won the MAC championship. That was not a bad win at all, but there was also a win over Eastern Illinois, Maryland, and Purdue. Purdue was just a free win in Maryland. Yeah, they were pretty dysfunctional. It just was not a good season at all, offensively or defensively for the Wildcats. Not even going to talk about the quarterback because he had 7 touchdowns to 8 picks. Very bad. I guess Cam Porter was like the one guy that was the shining light of that offense 500 yards and 6 touchdowns on 4 yards a carry flat. At least A.J. Henning and Bryce Kurtz had just around 600 yards, even though Henning had 4 touchdowns with Kurtz having 0. 0 prospects that were drafted or as undrafted free agents. This was just bad. We're just gonna go ahead and move on. Up next, we got the Ohio State Buckeyes. Cue it.
Elite!
I would put them in above average because they lost to Michigan, but they won the fucking national title. Where else is there to put them? National champions tier? I don't have time for that. Really great season. Played 3 top 5 teams, won 2 of them. Against Indiana and Penn State. Lost in heartbreaking fashion to Oregon, but then they got their revenge in the Rose Bowl. 14-2, a very spectacular season for the Buckeyes, assuming that they lost to Michigan as the number 2 team, which brought them down to the, I believe, 8th or 9th spot, and then they smoked Tennessee, smoked Oregon, beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl, like I said, and then beat Notre Dame. And guess what? Next season, they opened their season against the Longhorns of Texas, who they played in the Cotton Bowl. That game is going to be fire. Well, Howard had a very good season, 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns to 10 picks, very solid indeed. But then you go to the rushing stats. 2 players with 1,000 rushing yards this season. Quinshon Judkins, 1,060 and 14 touchdowns. And Trevion Henderson, 1,016 with 10 touchdowns. Can't forget about the receiving core. First round pick Emeka Egbuka had just over 1,000 yards on 81 catches with 10 touchdowns. But then the freshman phenom came around. Jeremiah Smith, 76 catches, 1,300 yards, and 15 touchdowns throughout the season. Good God. I counted off every single one of the drafted players. There were 14 players selected in the draft. What the hell? And they also had 4 first-round picks this season, this draft. Emeka Egbuka, like I just said. Then offensive lineman Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson. And defensive lineman Tyleik Williams also went in the first round. That just shows you how great of a season Ohio State had as national champs for the first time since 2014. The first year of the 14 playoff era. Congrats on your championship, Ohio State. And let's see if you'll repeat next year. Probably not, because your schedule is much worse. Speaking of elite teams, we got the Oregon Ducks up next.
Elite!
Undefeated regular season, Big Ten champions. They did go 13-1 because they lost in their first playoff game, but still an amazing season by the Oregon Ducks. The biggest, toughest game in that season had to be the Ohio State game when they won by 1 point. I don't know about y'all, but in the regular season, Oregon has always had Ohio State's number. They won in Columbus in 2021, and they beat them now at home against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Beat every team they played. They went 13-0 the regular season, like I just said. Beat Ohio State, like I just said. Dominated Illinois, and beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. And let me tell you, that Oregon schedule got a lot easier, so don't be surprised if they win at least 10 games this upcoming season. But Dan Lanning, you son of a bitch, you did it again. You're not fighting for clicks, you were fighting for wins. Actually, you were fighting for wins and clicks, so props to you, my man. Dylan Gabriel had a solid season, 3,800 yards, 30 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. But then you also got running back Jordan James, who was drafted. Dylan Gabriel was also drafted, don't get me wrong. 1,200 yards for James and 15 rushing touchdowns. And then you also got the lightest player in the NFL draft, Tez Johnson, with just under 900 receiving yards on 83 catches and 10 touchdowns. I think he was also drafted by the Tampa Bay Bucks, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, he was signed as an undrafted free agent. My bad. Oh no, he was drafted. Oops. 10 players were drafted by this Oregon squad, including 2 first-rounders, which were defensive lineman Derek Harmon to the Steelers and Josh Carnley Jr., offensive tackle, to the Commanders. Going undefeated, you can't go wrong with it, can you? Up until the playoffs, but a 13-0 regular season, including the Big Ten championship? There's nothing better than that besides, running the table and winning the national title, but I'm just going to look past that Rose Bowl game and say that was a great season for the Ducks. Up next, we got Penn State, another one. Cue it.
Elite!
Finished the season 13-3. They were 11-2, including the Big Ten championship game, which they lost. They also had a loss to the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think that was expected. Besides playing against Ohio State and Oregon, they had some great wins, but they also had a couple scares against USC, Bowling Green of all teams, and Minnesota. Every game except the Bowling Green game was a road game, so kind of the home field advantage was kind of a reason, but the Bowling Green game, there was literally no excuse. It was pretty much the battle of Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green versus Tyler Warren of Penn State. I'm going to get to him later. But they emphatically made the playoff as a 6th seed, and they proceeded to beat SMU and Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, but then lose in dramatic fashion to Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. A very successful season for James Franklin and Penn State, if you ask me. This schedule's not going to get any easier for Penn State as they have to play Oregon and Ohio State, this time in the regular season. Drew Aller had a pretty solid season, 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 picks, not terrible. The running back duo, who is also returning this upcoming season, Katrin Allen with 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, and Nick Singleton with just under 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns. But then you also got the absolute beast of a tight end, Tyler Warren, 104 catches, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. Crazy. Only 5 players were drafted, surprisingly, including 2 first-rounders, Abdul Carter, who was selected with the 3rd overall pick to the New York Giants, and Tyler Warren, who was selected to the Colts. And then you also got safety duo Kevin Winston and Shayla Reed going into the AFC South, along with Tyler Warren, and also you got Kobe King going to the Vikings as a linebacker. And Jalen Kemper remained the only draft-eligible undrafted free agent. Team success this past season, very, very good. Talent-wise, probably should have had more players drafted, but you got a lot of players with great potential, so who knows what's going to happen the next season. Up next, we got the Purdue Boilermakers. Ass. Ugh, what at 11? Win this in the conference? Yeah, y'all were the worst team by far. Your only win was against Indiana State. Ugh. Let me tell you, Purdue, you have a tendency to upset some big teams, but apparently this was not your year by far. Not even by a long shot. I'll give you where credit was due. You played like 6 ranked teams this season. Unreal. You probably should have beaten Illinois, but you lost in overtime. Not a great look at all. Hudson Card, 1,600 yards, 9 touchdowns, 7 picks. I mean, it was okay, but not great at all. Devin Mockabee had like just under 700 rushing yards with 4 touchdowns. And on the receiving end, Max Clare led the team with 685 yards and 4 touchdowns. Not great, not bad, but it's just somewhere in the middle. And only 1 player was drafted, surprisingly, from that 1-win team. Marcus Imbo, offensive tackle, went to the Giants. And another offensive lineman, Gus Hardwick, was an undrafted free agent. I mean, at least she got a player into the NFL, maybe 2. Because other than that, this season was just an absolute shit show. Up next, we got the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I have not put a team here all this time. Yeah, I think Rutgers needs to go in there. They were pretty disappointing. They were kind of supposed to be better after playing Ohio State very close in, 2023, but they weren't even close to that level. Did play close to Illinois, but that was the only ranked team they played against because every other team, it was just a very mid-season and very disappointing to say the least. It did start 4-0, including with a pretty big win over Washington, but that was pretty much it. Their quarterback, Ethan, I'm not going to pronounce that last name because I know for sure I'm going to butcher that. 2,700 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 picks. Not horrible. But then you got Kyle Monangai, who had 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns on the ground. Jesus. And Dymere Miller led receiving with 750 yards and 4 touchdowns. But you also got to include Ian Strong, who had just almost 700 yards with 5 touchdowns. And believe it or not, 3 players were drafted from Rutgers. Cornerback Robert Longerbeam, defensive lineman Keontae Hamilton, and like I just said, running back Kyle Monangai went to the Bears. And there were also 5 undrafted free agents in that draft class. Holland Pierce, offensive tackle, linebacker Tareem Powell, edge defender Aaron Lewis, defensive lineman Malcolm Ray, and wide receiver Dymere Miller. talent-wise, they actually produced a solid amount of talent into the NFL, but as far as the season, it was like meh, not good, not bad, just somewhere around the middle. They played a very good Great Bowl against Kent State, even though they lost, so there's that. 7-6 season, pretty disappointing. I gotta be honest with that one. Next, we got the UCLA Bruins. Yeah, they were pretty disappointing as well. I can't lie about that one either. The only thing that's keeping UCLA from the S tier was their draft, because they had a lot of players go pro. But I will get to that later. 5-7 season, not great. They did play 3 ranked teams this year. They lost every single one of them in pretty much blowout fashion. Very disappointing. Their biggest win, I would have to say, would have to be against Iowa. But other than that, they did play, I believe, 4 of the 5 teams that they won games against, they actually made a bowl game, so not terrible. Very disappointing, not gonna lie. You got Ethan Garbers getting 2,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 11 picks through the air. Not terrible. Rushing game was definitely abysmal. 500 yards, 2 touchdowns for TJ Harden, but nobody else got more than 200 yards. And receiving game, not very good either. Best one was Moliki Mataval. I don't know how to say that. 41 catches, 500 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And there's a reason why, aside from Mataval, tight end from UCLA, this was a very defensive draft class. You got Carson Schwessinger going in the first pick of the 2nd round to the Cleveland Browns. Then you got Oluwafemi Oladeja going to the Titans. Kay Madrano, linebacker, going to the Commanders. And Jay Toya, defensive lineman, going to the Cowboys. Like I said before, the only reason why this team wasn't in S tier is because they had 5 players getting drafted, which is really good. It was pretty solid compared to the Big Ten teams. Not great, not bad. 5 players being drafted is actually solid. Up next, we got USC Trojans. I haven't done it in a while, but yeah, they were decent. They went 7-6. They did win the Vegas Bowl over Texas A&M, so that wasn't terrible. Beat LSU in a kickoff game to start the year. We all thought Miller Moss was going to be great, but he ended up getting benched midway through the season. They lost to Michigan, lost to Penn State in overtime. They played close to a couple of ranked opponents besides Notre Dame, but yeah, this was not exactly great for USC Trojans fans. I'm used to seeing USC be one of the top teams in the country, 2000s with Pete Carroll, but with Lincoln Riley, defense was just not optimal at all. It was really depending on the offense. And I guess after the first 2 games, the offense just ran out of gas. I don't think Miller Moss is that bad. 2,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 9 picks is actually not that bad. Then you got Jaden Maeva, had 11 touchdowns, 1,200 yards, and 6 picks. Not terrible quarterback stats if you ask me. And then you got Woody Marks with 1,100 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns, which is crazy. And on the receiving core, the leader was Mekhi Lemon, who had 700 yards and 3 touchdowns. But can't forget about Jacoby Lane with his 12 receiving touchdowns. And surprisingly, only 3 players were drafted. Jalen Smith, corner out of USC, going to the Texans, along with running back Woody Marks. And also offensive tackle Jonah Monheim, going to the Jags. Secondary had some undrafted free agents, including Achille Arnold and Grady Vance Jr. Pretty surprising to see that only 3 players went pro as far as the draft was concerned from USC. Really just shows how far they've fallen off with Lincoln Riley at the helm. Up next, we got the Washington Huskies. Yeah, I'll be honest, very disappointing season for Washington after they had a playoff season the year before. They went 6-7, lost the Sun Bowl to Louisville. They did beat a ranked team in Michigan as far as the top 10 opponent goes, but other than that, not very good. Lost to their rival Washington State, lost badly to Penn State and Oregon, and also lost to Indiana on game day in Bloomington. Speaking of Bloomington, a legendary coach came from there that is actually retiring from the college game day cast. Lee Corso will be doing his final game day in the first week of next year, which is very disappointing to say, but I understand, he is getting old. Thank you so much for the memories, Lee Corso. You will forever be a legend in college football, forever. Anyways, back to Washington. Yeah, below 500, not great at all, to say the least. They were definitely way far from their big season in 2023 when they had Michael Penix drafted in the top 10 along with Rome Odunze. They had two quarterbacks playing. Will Rogers was the starter, 2,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. Not terrible. You also got DeBon Williams having 8 touchdowns and a pick on almost 1,000 passing yards. Pretty solid stats. And then you got Jonah Coleman with just over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. Then you got two players with just over 800 yards. Denzel Boston, 834 with 9 touchdowns, and Giles Jackson with just under 900 yards with 7 touchdowns. And shockingly, only one player was drafted, Carson Bruner, linebacker, going to the Steelers. You also got Cameron, I'm not going to pronounce his last name, safety for Washington, was an drafted free agent. I'm surprised not many other players came from Washington in that draft, but 6-7 season, not always the best if you ask me. And finally, we got the Wisconsin Badgers. As much as people want me to put them in S tier, nah, they were really just disappointing. 5-7 record. They played 4 ranked teams this year. Very brutal schedule, to be serious with you. Got bounced in their own house against Alabama. Traveled on the road to play USC, lost that game. Played at home against Penn State in Oregon. Nearly beat the Ducks, but Penn State also could have potentially won that game. But they weren't really bad at all. They could have made a bowl game if they had a better schedule than that. And I gotta be honest with you, Wisconsin's schedule this upcoming season is pretty much tougher. They're still playing Bama, playing Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. I'm not sure if Indiana's going to be as intimidating as they were, but Cincinnati could find a way to make it happen. But other than that, yeah, it's been a very disappointing year for Badger fans, who are known for having some consistently top 10 teams. It just was not a great season, to say the least. Tyler Van Dyke retired after some injury. Braden Locke, 13 touchdowns, just under 2,000 yards to 10 picks. I don't know what the future looks like at quarterback. I'm not too sure. Tawee Walker, 864 yards, 10 touchdowns on the ground. Not terrible, not the kind of stats you would see from a Wisconsin running back. As you know, Wisconsin offensive line is usually very reliable at blocking for the run game. And then you also got Vinny Anthony with 672 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, not great offensively at all. Only 2 players were drafted from this team, including Jack Nelson, offensive tackle, who was selected by my Falcons. There was also Hunter Wooler, safety, who went to the Colts. And undrafted free agents included interior offensive lineman Joe Huber and edge defender John, I don't think I can pronounce that name. Puce? I don't know. Very disappointing. Like, Wisconsin is known to have like a lot of players drafted, especially from the trenches, but not this season. And now we got my predictions on how every Big Ten team will do in the upcoming 2025 college football season. You got contenders who are double-digit winners and also contenders to make the playoff. You got above-average teams who are expected to not exactly make the playoff but still be a good team. Then you got the decent and below-average teams that I expect to be around 500. And then you got the teams I predict to be very bad, terrible. 0-4 wins. Let's get straight into it, starting with Illinois. Ohio State is definitely their toughest game. You also got to play a Duke team that just came off of a 9-win season? Yeah, they were 4th in the ACC standings, which is nuts. I actually do expect them to be a bowl team. I think they're not going to have as good of a season as they did, but I think they'll still have a pretty impressive season, at least to make a bowl game, so that's going to be pretty good. But this team can go 7-5 as much as they can go 9-3 or 10-2. That's kind of my prediction. I feel like it's a little too low, but 7.5 is the over/under for wins for Illinois. I think I'm going to take barely lower. They do return Luke Altmaier, which is actually very good. And yeah, they were returning nearly every starter on offensive defense, so expect them to get 10 wins, maybe 9 in the upcoming season. Up next, we got Indiana. I am 100% sure they are going to be above average, especially their coach's name, Kurt Cignetti. Their schedule is definitely more friendly this time around. I mean, as far as compared to their other schedule, I think it's a little bit better. Worse for Indiana, better in terms of how many great teams they're going to play. Out of conference is a lot friendlier than people expect, but as far as conference schedule, it's a lot tougher. But I still think Indiana's going to come away with about 9 wins. I think just barely they get over the 8.5 win mark people are expecting. Out of conference includes Old Dominion and Kennesaw State, who I believe are, one of them is like in the Sun Belt or something like that, and the other is in Conference USA in their second season as an FBS team. But ranked ones potentially they would have to play are, I guess, Illinois, Oregon, and Penn State. Interesting stuff. I think 8-4, 9-3 is about where I would put Indiana. With their head coach, yeah, especially with the talent that left, I think he could have another solid season, especially since he's probably one of the best head coaches in the group of 5. And as far as Big Ten goes, he's probably up there in the top 5 of the conference. Up next, we got the Iowa Hawkeyes. I expect them to be decent once again. Besides Iowa State, the out-of-conference schedule is definitely going to be like 2-1, 100%. You also got games against Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon who made the playoff. Not a great look. I think 6-6 or 7-5 is a very fair estimate of Iowa because, quarterback situation, that's not the only problem with Iowa. It's, well, as far as line of scrimmage goes, it's not great at all. A schedule that's overly friendly, I don't know. The out-of-conference does bring it up a bit, but it's like right around the middle in terms of the tough screens of schedules. Yeah, probably just go like 6-6 or something like that. Then we got the Maryland Terrapins, who are coming off a pretty disappointing season. And let me say, their schedule was much better than what they had last year. That was brutal. But I still think they are going to win at least 7 games. Out of conference is a little better. I mean, besides the whole UConn thing, they had to play FAU, who's coming off a losing season. Northern Illinois is coming off an okay season for the MAC, but not great in terms of like being a ranked team because of beating Notre Dame. And then you got Towson, who's a high school. Nobody cares about that. I think Maryland's a little better than their record suggested. It's way easier schedule because they skipped out on playing Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. Racy stuff, but I think they will go at least 7 games with a win. Up next, we got the Michigan Wolverines. Also, her coach Sherrone Moore is going to be suspended for a couple of games because of, I think, the cheating scandal. I'm not actually sure. The sign stealing scandal, I don't know what it was. So, with that in mind, I feel like they can actually get 8 wins in this season. Their schedule is definitely light. I think the quarterback situation will be just a bit better. But, as far as the defense goes, yeah, they lost a lot of talent on there. So, it's going to be a little concerning to see what Michigan does here. But, Sherrone Moore has definitely learned a lot of things under Coach Jim Harbaugh. So, maybe he can figure it out, maybe not. Oh yeah, they also have Bryce Underwood under center, so he might be able to fix that. And also, Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards are gone, so running back's a big hole. Wide receiver, I'm not so sure about, but tight end's definitely a big hole because Colston Loveland's also gone. Every single key player is gone now, so honestly, you know what? I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to move Michigan over to decent. I just now realized every player from that title team that was in 2023 is now gone. So yeah, I'll probably say 7-5 again. Next up is Michigan State. I'm going to just say 5-7 again, below average. What can you do? If Ada Childs can get going under Coach Mel Tucker, I think Michigan State can make a bowl game. But if he can't, this could be a disaster. It's going to really depend on the quarterback spot because, I'm not super high on him, but if he does well this upcoming season, then good for him. He could turn into a 9-win team, but if he doesn't, this could be another season without a bowl game for the Spartans. I'm around 5-7 or 6-6 for Michigan State right now. Up next, we got Minnesota Golden Gophers. Let me tell you, they got lucky with the schedule besides Ohio State and Oregon. but I still think they're going to go 7-5 this upcoming season. 6.5 wins is the threshold. I think that's a little bullshit. In the last 6 seasons, disregarding the COVID season, they only missed a bowl game twice. I know their quarterback is gone along with some of their offensive linemen, but you can't disregard PJ Fleck's chance to be able to turn a good team around like the Gophers, like Western Michigan, PJ Fleck is considered those underrated coaches in the Big Ten, and I think he's going to have a very surprise for a lot of us in the Big Ten. Up next, we got the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Let me tell you, they lucked out with this schedule. I think they're going to be above average this year. Obviously, it really depends on Dylan Raiola and see how he can fit into the system and play well. But I still think this team can really squeak out some wins. And I hate to say it, but Nebraska might be back. Like I said before, this season really depends on whether Dylan Raiola can be a very good quarterback in that conference. Because if he does, Nebraska could be on the rise for the years to come. So watch out for the Cornhuskers next year. They could be in for a treat here. Coming up next, we get the Northwestern Wildcats. First team in this tier, but I gotta say they're gonna be 4-8, maybe 3-9 this upcoming season. But 3.5 wins is actually quite insane. It really just shows how far Northwestern has fallen off ever since their magical 2020 season, where they, was once in the top 10. Oh yeah, there's another guy going over from SMU when they made the playoff. He wasn't the main guy, but Preston Stone could be a big sleeper as far as Big Ten quarterbacks. It really depends on how well he does, but I'm not too high on that Northwestern team. As much as I would love to say it, I don't think they're going to be there at all. At least not yet. Give it a couple years, okay? Up next, we got Ohio State. They are 100% a championship contender. You can't get me wrong. I'm predicting 11-1 with their only loss to Texas. If you don't know already, they opened their season with the Longhorns to start the year, which is quite insane. It's definitely going to be college game day. I'm looking forward to that game. The fact that the over-under for Ohio State is 10.5 wins according to CBS really just shows how good Ohio State can be. I'm expecting a top 10 finish for the Buckeyes, and if they don't, it's probably going to be one of the biggest collapses we have ever seen. Obviously, the toughest games on this schedule is against Texas, Penn State, and Michigan. Of course, Michigan, because they've lost 4 straight now to the Wolverines. Maybe they go 10-2 with losses to Texas and Michigan. Who knows? It's really going to be a double-digit win team for Ohio State once again. You can bet on that. Up next, we got the Oregon Ducks, another team that is coming off a double-digit win season. And I'll say it, they're going to do it again. Coach Lanning is a beast of a head coach, I'll tell you that. Even with the quarterback controversy, they avoided Michigan and Ohio State, and they also got the Trojans at home, which is going to be crazy. The biggest games are Washington and Penn State, but come on, I expect this team to at least go to 11-1. I think they could run the table again. Perhaps a 13-0 season with a Big Ten title again? Who knows? I think Oregon could definitely do so. But only time will tell. Quarterback controversy is going to be the biggest issue. Because if a quarterback goes to a disaster, Oregon might fall out of championship contenders. So definitely keep an eye on the quarterback situation if you're an Oregon fan. Next up, we got Penn State. Another 10-win team. I mean, come on. Are we really surprised at this point? James Franklin, as much as he doesn't win the big games, he does in fact win the games that he's supposed to. And now that the 12-team playoff is a lock, it's looking like he's going to make another playoff with Penn State. Jim Knowles is also going to the Penn State Nittany Lions from Ohio State to be able to lead his unit. I can't remember what he did. But don't you dare be surprised if Penn State goes double-digit wins, maybe making a Big Ten championship. But at the end of the day, it's anyone's guess. I expect this team to go 10-2 with losses to Oregon and Ohio State. Like, if they don't get at least 10 wins here, Penn State fans are going to be asking for James Franklin's head. And I completely understand because For some reason, he just never wins the big games unless it's in the playoff, apparently. Up next, we got the Purdue Boilermakers. Do I think they're going to be better than 1-11 this time around? Yes. Do I think they're going to be enough to be a bowl contender? Absolutely not. Let me tell you, Purdue's schedule is absolute hell with games like Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Indiana. Oh boy, yeah, it's going to be a train wreck. I'm thinking 2-10, maybe 3-9 here. I think it's going to be under 3.5 wins. I think that's generous that they're giving Purdue the over-under of 3.5 wins after a 1-win season. They do have a new head coach in charge, so I'm very interested to see what he can do. But I just not expect Purdue to make a bowl game, not even close. Up next, we got the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I think their over-under is 5.5 wins. Let me tell you, they're going to be right around that mark. I'm thinking 5-7 or 6-6 here. End of the season with both Ohio State and Penn State is really tough to get out of alive. Oh yeah, they also got the triple head. They got Oregon at home, they got Ohio State on the road, and they got Penn State at home. Not good for Rutgers at all. They still got their quarterback returning, and you know, their schedule is very bad, but you know, Scarlet Knights, I don't know if they could survive, man. Like, of course, they got returning talent. This team could easily make a bowl game, but they could also easily not make one. So, it depends on how well he's progressed over this offseason. 4 teams left to go. Let's do it quick. UCLA Bruins. They do start the season with Utah. They ended up getting Penn State and Indiana along with Ohio State. I think they'll be right around below average. Maybe a 6-6 season is in order. Maybe 5-7. The over-under is 4.5 wins. Yeah, they're probably going to go over on this one. They did have a good second half of the season, which is actually not terrible. If they can win some games at home, this team could make a bowl game, but they're not quite up to the contenders quite yet. Next up, we got the USC Trojans. Yeah, I would say they would probably go 6-6 or 7-5 here. I'm going to guess 7-5 for USC, just under the over-under, which is 7.5 wins. Unfortunately for USC, they finished the regular season with 8 or more wins twice in the last 6 full seasons. That's not including 2020. And guess what? The USC has only done it once in Lincoln Riley's tenure with the Trojans. Yeah, let's be honest. USC is pretty much just a bid team with no defense and plenty of offense. It really depends on how well the offense plays, and I'll be honest, the future does not look bleak. Does not look good with Lincoln Riley. Up next, Washington Huskies. They got screwed by this schedule, but I still think Washington can make a bowl game. I'm going to say 6-6 and maybe 7-5. If Damon Williams can play well and he could take him to another level, they should at least make a bowl game, but I'm right around 5-7 wins for Washington here. I'm really hoping he does well, but if he doesn't, Washington could be in a whole heap of trouble. And since this was the first year without Kalen DeBoer leading the offense and defense, it's really going to be interesting to see how well Washington can play. But I'm not expecting them to do much. And finally, of course, we have the Wisconsin Badgers. I think they'll probably make a bowl game. Maybe they go 5-7 again. Just not looking good for the Badgers at all. Very tough schedule with Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. Yeah, it's going to be tough for the Badgers to really get out of this alive. 8 of the 9 Big Ten opponents made a bowl last season, so maybe Wisconsin could squeak out a couple wins, maybe make a bowl game. But I'm not too high on Wisconsin. I don't think it's not going to be anything special. And those are my reviews of the 2024 season out of the Big Ten, as well as my predictions on how the Big Ten season will go in 2025. And that'll do it for this episode of Grizzly Talks Football. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you smash that like button, hit that red subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single one of my videos. This is the Grizz signing off for now, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace!